Does my drinking offend you? Probably not. What on earth am I doing? But this comment did offend me. This was a response to me saying that I want Conte to stay at Tottenham. Let's get into the video of why I think Tottenham must keep Antonio Conte. It seems as though Antonio Conte's Tottenham are lacking purpose and spiralling into a cloud of negativity. Some already feeling that negativity as it's increasingly suffocating the club, with the damning 4-1 loss to Leicester City away from home and the 1-0 loss to AC Milan, and the injuries that Spurs picked up in a 6-week injury to Hugo Lloris, a 3-month injury to Yves Bissouma, and a 7-month injury or 6-month injury to Rodrigo Bentancur. Conte has also been forced to stay in Italy for now to fully recover from his surgery. Some Spurs fans think this is a good time to end it altogether, just part ways as it's not working. And he's going through a lot of personal issues. I think this is maybe a little bit of a reasonable point, but I mean, Antonio Conte will be fine eventually. How many times will people give up on projects? Just a complete waste of time. It feels like Tottenham, like Gary Neville said a few weeks ago on Monday Night Football, that Tottenham are just having a bit of a sulk. I think you can see that in some of the players and some of the fans. And have actually given up on the season. I think you can see it in some of the players' body language. You look at Dyer, Davis, some others as well. It's been pathetic, and there's so much more to play for in this season. Spurs are only 1-0 down to AC Milan. Spurs are also in the quarterfinals or round of 16 of the FA Cup with a favourable tie against Sheffield United away, and are actually above Newcastle in the league. Yes, they've played one more, but you rather have the points on the board. I know it sounds odd, but I think the long-term play is the smart one with Conte here. Later on in the video, I'll explain why the 23-24 season next year could be an exciting one for Tottenham fans if they stay with Antonio Conte. But let's look a little bit more at the negativity at Tottenham. For the first time the other day, after the AC Milan game or Leicester game, hashtag Conte out was trending on Twitter for the first time. And many Spurs fans have started to turn on the Italian for his negative tactics and Spurs' lack of chance creation. That's bearing in mind, since Conte took over Tottenham in the Premier League, they've actually scored the second most goals. As you can see, they've scored 104. That's 35 behind Man City. They're in a world of their own, but they're actually above the rest of the top 6 for goals scored since he took over. Now, here's a really simple reason why I think Tottenham should stick with Antonio Conte. Well, unless he wants to leave at that point, then this whole video is irrelevant. The first is, I was so hyped when Antonio Conte was revealed as Spurs manager, like every other Spurs fan out there. This is a manager that we saw completely out of our league. I just couldn't believe he was actually our manager. And I promised myself I wouldn't want him out no matter what, no matter how boring it got, no matter how bad it got. I would always want Conte to be our manager. The main reason for this is when you look at Spurs and what type of club they are, this is a club that's won 1 League Cup in 22 years under Daniel Levy. This isn't a Daniel Levy out video. I don't mind Daniel Levy that much. But the success has been indubitably limited. But I didn't mind Pochettino, Mourinho or Nuno getting sacked. Now Pochettino, let's start with him, because did I want Pochettino to get sacked? No, I didn't. He obviously did an amazing job at Tottenham and actually revolutionised the club. He's the reason why Tottenham can now get an Antonio Conte as their manager. And would I have chosen for him, like I said, to get him sacked? No. But I was totally fine with it. The project came to an end, the players were regressing, and Spurs actually hadn't won anything anyway. Me personally, I'm not really obsessed with the whole trophy stuff. I just want to see that the club's going in the right direction and that Spurs are competing well enough. But that wasn't true in Pochettino's case in the last season. That Pochettino developed in the 16-17 season was not really the same side anymore in his last year. In the 19-20 season, his last season, Spurs were looking flat. They weren't pressing as much and were 14th in the Premier League table. Pochettino's last away win in the Premier League was on the 20th of January 2019. Spurs' next away win was on the 23rd of November 2019, Mourinho's first away game. Pochettino basically went a whole 8 months without winning an away game. There were heavy reports that he was unhappy, not leading training anymore, and that he had just lost the dressing room. Mourinho came in and I was really excited, a bit like Conte, and at one point we were fantastic. 12 games into the 2021 season, we were top of the league, playing really good football. You might remember us beating Southampton 5-2, Son scoring 4, Kane assisting 4, and also going to Man United and beating them 6-1. An iconic result for Tottenham. But Mourinho was past his prime. The football was so bad. You think it's bad now, it was worse then. And all of a sudden, Tottenham was 7th really quickly, and the whole season was on a Carabao Cup. That's what I felt Mourinho was, someone who can win us a Carabao Cup. With Conte, I think we can go a bit further. And it was a weakened Premier League. So to finish 7th, with a Harry Kane that got 23 goals and 14 assists, winning the top scorer and playmaker award, I think is unsatisfactory. I will never forgive Mourinho for opting to play Lucas Moura over Gareth Bale. Gareth Bale that year had the best goals to game ratio in the Premier League. He had 11 goals in 10 starts, whereas Lucas Moura had 3 in 14. Nuno, well, I don't really need to explain to you why I was happy Nuno left. The football was terrible. Miserable, the team felt lost, and we lost 3-0 to the worst Man United side of all time. So what makes Conte different? Well, to put it simply, I don't think we can do better than Conte. For me, Conte is the 3rd best manager in the world. Behind Pep and Klopp, he's achieved everywhere he's gone. But I feel Tottenham fans have fell into the trap that the manager is the one to blame, which is quite impressive after, like I said, Tottenham have won 1 League Cup in 22 years. But instead claiming a manager who's won and been successful everywhere else he's gone is the one to blame, and that he's not up to standard. We are seeing the same pattern, the same players under-delivering for every manager. With the sacking culture these days, fans want a quick fix. I wasn't surprised #Conte out was trending. I'm sure another manager could get performances out of these players for a few months, and then the same thing happens again and the cycle restarts. If Tottenham were to sack Antonio Conte, the 2 main managers linked to the role are Thomas Tuchel and Mauricio Pochettino. Let's start with Tuchel first. What's the point? They're very similar managers, they both play 3 at the back, they're both labelled as defensive. I know Tuchel's Dortmund were quite attacking, but you can't doubt at Chelsea it was more defensive. And I see a lot of people complaining about Conte's comments to the board, and they're not forgetting that Pochettino did the same thing towards the end of his tenure, and Tuchel has consistently done that at clubs he's been at as well. Now, Tuchel is a little bit more likeable. The Chelsea fans love Thomas Tuchel and wish he didn't leave, but I just don't see the point. I think Tuchel's an amazing manager, and if Conte were to leave, or we did sack Conte and got Tuchel, I'm not going to complain. I just think it's pointless, and it means you have to start another project over again. Let's talk about Pochettino, because he's the main one linked. Look, it would be cool and I would understand it, but it's way too soon. Lloris, Sanchez, Dyer, Sessegnon, Tanganga, Davis, Skip, Kane and Son are all still there who were there under Pochettino. If I were to bring Poch back, I'd do it when the club is in a whole new place. To me, the club doesn't feel different enough from where it was in the past. Those players could look at Poch and think, last time we were with you, we were 14th in the Premier League and not doing very well. Why are you the man to take us forward? The main reason I'm seeing a lot of people want Poch back in is the play style. I don't remember the play style being too good when we were 3-0 down to Brighton, or the game before that, lost 7-2 to Bayern Munich, and lost to Colchester on pens. Let's look at Antonio Conte's progress so far. When Conte took over at Tottenham were 10 games into the season. They were 9th in the Premier League, and they were a complete shambles. Under Nuno, they had lost 50% of the games, which is disgraceful for a club like Tottenham. Last year, he turned Tottenham into a really good side. After a bad spell, losing 3 and 4, losing to Southampton and Wolves at home, and then Burnley away 1-0, everyone thought it was over. In the Burnley game or after it, Conte was saying, am I the right man for the job? But then Tottenham went and beat Leeds 4-0, and you could sort of see the beginning of Conte's team started to look very good. You know, you saw Kulusevski and Bentancur really slotting in nicely in that team. Then in Tottenham's last 13 games of the season, they won 9, drew 2 and lost 1. No, that's not maths. Won 9, drew 2 and lost 2, which is very impressive. Got Spurs Champions League football, which was an amazing achievement. Don't underestimate how big of an achievement that was. I didn't think there was any way he would get Tottenham into the Champions League. This year, what's happened? So I've seen a lot of pundits, I've seen a lot of people say that Conte's tactics don't work in the Premier League, and that style of football doesn't work anymore. A lot of fans say Conte's style can't compete for a Premier League. People compare him with Mourinho, but I really do not think they are comparable in the slightest. In his prime, yes, Mourinho was one of the best ever, but he won the Europa League with Man United. It was a good achievement, but they were the best team in that competition. It's still good to win it, of course. But for me, the real big thing Mourinho did, the last time Mourinho did something huge, was winning the Premier League in 2015, nearly 8 years ago. Compare that to Conte. Conte did something magnificent 2 years ago, ending Juventus's 9-year domination, which he started, by the way, winning 3 in a row in Juventus at the start in 11-12, 12-13 and the 13-14 season, and 4 and 5 years ago winning the Premier League and FA Cup with Chelsea, to then 2 years ago winning the Serie A with Inter Milan. Huge achievement. And last year, like I said, getting Spurs to the Champions League, that is also an amazing achievement as well. He isn't a dinosaur, he's not past it. I also don't think the playstyle is supposed to be this deep. Tottenham's average position against Arsenal in the first half was absolutely disgraceful. It was every single player in Tottenham's half apart from Harry Kane. And Conte cannot be happy with that, considering Spurs come out the second half of every game a completely different team. But look at the midfield in that game. They had Højbjerg and Kepp. And although I think individually these two are very good players, I'm a massive fan of Oliver Kepp. Together, it doesn't work. Spurs are a completely different side with Rodrigo Bentancur. Against Man City, twice, Spurs were pressing much higher. Against Fulham and even against Leicester, I know they got smashed, but the tempo was so much better. Just the defending wasn't. Now let's look at the players and how much they've regressed from last year to this year. As a manager, you will get blamed for it, but it's the same players consistently dropping in levels. And I'm sorry, but some of these players have been absolutely embarrassing. Just watch the Leicester highlights. That's all you have to do to understand how poor some of these players have been. Let's have a look at Hugo Lloris, Ben Davies, Eric Dyer and Heung-min Son. Hugo Lloris, his save percentage has dropped to 68%, which is the 12th best in the Premier League. Not good enough at all. He's also made the most errors this year, leading to a goal in 4, which is honestly massive. That is so many. And they've all been crucial. Let's have a look at what games he's done them in. He's done them against Arsenal away from home, where Spurs lost 3-1, but before the mistake, it was 1-1. Newcastle at home as well, Spurs lost 2-0. Before he made the mistake, it was 0-0. Aston Villa at home, it was 2-0 to Aston Villa, but before the mistake, it was 0-0. And against Arsenal at home, it was 2-0 to Arsenal, and before the mistake, it was 0-0. So he's consistently making crucial errors when Spurs are in the game. And they've been really poor errors too. Spurs have been that bad at times at defending that somehow he's not even been the biggest problem. Eric Dyer has been absolutely pathetic at times. His form actually dipped around about the same time he got in the England squad, because before that he was playing okay, playing well for Conte. Since he's been back in the England squad, it's been mistake after mistake. I think there is sort of a complacency in there, but the best players, they perform over a consistent amount of time. They don't get complacent. Dyer, Lloris, Sessegnon, Davis, they can play well at times. They're not good enough to consistently perform at a very high level. Now let's have a look at the new signings. Now with the new signings, the anticipation to do well is increased. Let's start with Perisic. Now Conte relies so much on fullbacks in his system, and it probably doesn't help when they're both not very good. Now Perisic from set pieces, yes, has been very good. We are one of the best. I think we are the best team in the league for set pieces, and he's very reliable from a dead ball situation. He has 5 assists in the Premier League actually from corners, so you can see there how good he's been from corners. But his overall game has been really poor. He's had so many chances to score. I will discuss later in the video comparing him to someone else, just how bad it is, his, conversion rate and his misses. He's had some really easy chances. His dribble success rate is 38%. It's been so frustrating watching him and Sessegnon on that left side, trying to beat men, crossing balls, play the right ball at the right time. It's just been so frustrating. Let's go on to Jed Spence. Now this one, every Spurs fan and even non-Spurs fans I think were excited for this one. And it's tricky because he's clearly very talented. He had an amazing year at Nottingham Forest, and this chair keeps making noises. But he wasn't Conte signing, he was the board signing. And for me, this is one reason why I think Spurs should keep Conte. It's because I trust Conte to make the right decision. If he doesn't play Spence, I trust him enough that I think there's got to be a good enough reason. And I think Rennes fans and people who watch Ligue 1 have already seen that he does have defensive liabilities in his game. But that right-hand side has not been good for Spurs. Emerson has been really good lately, but overall this season, oh my word, he's been bad. Let's talk about Basuma, because I thought he was going to be a superstar, but he's having a really tough time adjusting to Conte's system. And I think it's going to take a while for him to learn it, but I think eventually he will get there. I think he will be a big player for us. And I think him and Bentancur and maybe another player can have a really good partnership. Richarlison, now I don't know what people expected. I see so many memes of him having 0 goals, but he was never going to really be a starter for Spurs. He's not going to play on the right-hand side instead of Kulusevski. He wasn't going to play on the left, instead of Son. We'll talk about Son a little bit after this. And he was never going to start ahead of Harry Kane either. The one reason I think I can blame Conte is I think he's dropped Son not enough. He's persisted with Son, which I think you do for the first 15 games. Maybe you think he's going to bring his form back, but that's not going to happen, it looks like, unless he's on the bench. And I think he does have to be benched. I think Conte can take blame for not playing Richarlison at times, but he's been unlucky. Richarlison has had injuries where Son has been fit, or not, where Son has been fit, Richarlison's been injured, so he's not had the chance to rotate them as much. But Richarlison has played well for Spurs. Every time he's played, he's always looked neat and tidy. I've been really impressed when I've watched Richarlison. Another reason why Tottenham have not quite lived up to expectation is because they're not a good team without Kulusevski and Bentancur pretty much. Bentancur has only been able to start 17 games this year out of 23. And without him, they've drew 2, they've lost 2, and they've won 2. Bentancur is so important because without him, Spurs pretty much have 3 CDMs in Basuma, Højbjerg and Skip. And when they play together, there is just nothing. They get boxed in. They're 2 midfielders that can't really break the press or just deal with the pressure of being on the ball. They can't play quick combinations to be able to transition really quickly. So Spurs usually get dominated and sit 10 men behind the ball. Bentancur with Højbjerg has developed a really good relationship, and what usually happens is actually Bentancur drops off and he's able to, play with the centre-backs, beat the press, and he's actually really reliable at being deep as well. I'll show his stats here. His attacking, defending and midfield stats on FBref, really reliable. He's really complete and he just does everything. And he's so press-proof as well. If you remember how bad Spurs were before Bentancur and Kulusevski came in, you know how important those 2 players are to Conte. Give Conte the players he wants, and I think Tottenham can thrive. Now let's talk about Son, because Conte's system relies on being quick, having a great touch, being clinical, and well, Son has been none of those things this year. He's absolutely fell off a cliff. I don't know what's happened. I think he gave his absolute all for that golden boot last year, and it might be one of those ones where he has a year just finding himself again, and then maybe next year he's back to his best, or he's just past it. He gave absolutely everything to his last season. And it's not because of the mask. He's been terrible since the first game of the season. In 23 Premier League games this year, he scored in 3 of them. And in the 20 starts that he's had, he scored 1. His touch has been piss, he's ruined most of our attacks, and it's like playing with 10 men at times. Tottenham have been so reliant on Son. Even last year, he was so important. So for Conte to lose pretty much his best player, or one of, with Harry Kane, is obviously going to be a massive, massive problem. Now let's look at Tottenham in the 23-24 season, and why I think it could be an exciting one, and why I think Conte should stick around. Now let's start with the fullbacks. Antonio Conte will actually have good fullbacks in Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro. The area where Conte has lacked the most in his time at Tottenham, and it's been like I said, really frustrating. But he's that good of a manager, he can get really good performances out of Doherty and Sessegnon and help us get Champions League football. You know, I thought it'd be improved with Perisic and Spence, but that didn't happen. This video, like I said, Destiny, Udogie and Porro, you can't take it as fact that they're going to be very good. It's sort of guesswork and just things that I've seen. But Destiny, Udogie has 2 goals this year. He's getting into great positions as he's averaging double Perisic's shots per game. Perisic is averaging 0.5, Destiny Udogie is averaging 1. Like I said, Perisic has missed 4 big chances this year. It feels like more, it could be more to be honest. He has obviously a goal conversion rate of 0%, whereas Destiny Udogie has a goal conversion rate of 12%. And why do I think Conte will like Udogie so much is in transition I think he will help a lot. Udogie is averaging 1.2 interceptions per game compared to Perisic's at 0.7. Accompany that with Destiny Udogie's 2.7 tackles per game. Destiny Udogie has also won 5.8 duels this year, winning 50% of them, whereas Perisic has only won 2.4. On the other side, it's January transfer Pedro Porro. Now, he did play against Leicester and he was terrible, but it was his first game and I think he will get used to this Conte system and being a bit better defensively. I can tell you that Pedro Porro is a all-out attack fullback just by his stats on FBref. Comparing him to the best fullbacks in the world, he's top 5% for non-penalty goals, top 1% for shots, top 1% for assists, and top 1% for progressive passes received. That also shows that his positioning is really good. When you think of how many times Kane drops deep, spreads the ball to a Matt Doherty, we've seen that so many times in the past year, I feel like it could be really exciting him doing that to Pedro Porro. The depth will also be better. On the right it will be Spence and Pedro Porro, and on the left it will be Udogie and either Reguilon, Sessegnon or Perisic. I think Reguilon will get first team football somewhere else. So with the fullback positions finally sorted for Conte next year, what else do they need? Well, they need a keeper, they need ideally 2 centre-backs, and they need an attacking centre mid. That could cost a lot of money, considering everyone costs about £80 million these days, but off the top of my head, you know, a McAllister, a David Raya, whose contract is running out, and I would have said Hincapié, but he signed a new contract, but someone like that. And I think Tottenham are looking a lot more dangerous at that point, and a really exciting team. And I think those signings makes Conte happy, which makes Tottenham happy. Now there's one last hurdle, Harry Kane. Harry Kane is another reason why Tottenham must keep Conte. If Conte leaves and Spurs keep Harry Kane, what's the point? You're not going to get a better manager than Conte to manage Kane. If I was Tottenham and I got rid of Conte, I'd probably sell Kane too. Fabrizio Romano, David Ornstein and Sky Sports have all said that Kane wants to sign a new contract. For me, the dream situation for Tottenham would be to Kane sign a new contract with Antonio Conte, 2 elite superstars in the football world at Tottenham Hotspur. That's not going to happen very often, and with good fullbacks. It's the dream situation, surely. Closer to the summer, I will make a video on who I think Tottenham should sign. The signings I just named there were literally off the top of my head. They weren't. I scripted this video, but you know, I didn't think about it that much. But yeah, like I said, I'll make a video closer to the summer who I think Tottenham should sign and sell. In the comments, let me know if you think Tottenham should renew Antonio Conte's contract. Let me know where you stand, as I do read comments and reply to them. Have you subscribed? Because I drank nearly a full Budweiser just at the start. That little thing I did at the start. Sorry for that, by the way. I'll drink a bit more. Subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like as it helps the algorithm. Subscribe if you are new, and thank you for watching.